Hello there, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Psyched to be with you. With me, your host, Christopher Leach, aka Chimp195. Episode 6, halfway through season 4. Jeremy Beremy timing. You're going to be getting this in June. Those hot summer nights already coming in, presumably. We have no idea what the weather will be like at that point, but I'm hopeful that you'll be enjoying it wherever you are in the world. Today, I bring with you a guest I've been highly anticipated to have on the show for a long time. Someone I personally hold in high esteem and similarly cherish to a good degree. Also, as ever, all remains for me to do. For those watching, my guest is already being funny, which really sets the tone for this episode. But enough from me. My very special guest, if you could please tell us who you are and what you do.
Oh, hi there. My name is Bryn. I mostly go by Bryn. I am the head of Chit Chat at Super Rare Games, which basically entails being good at just talking to people, which is how I've done most things in my life. And at this point, I'm currently focusing on social media and community management, as well as building up our public image at the company towards our digital and physical games.
And I feel like head of Chit Chat is quite the hefty job title to be bringing to a podcast, Bren, I'll be honest.
Yeah.
So I'm very excited.
Get ready for some fire segues and stuff,
Oof.
I'm sure we'll figure things out.
So for context, I like to give listeners a slight insight as to how I know my guests. So that will be a nice platform for us to build on. But we met through the Limit Break mentorship scheme at the opening evening. There down in London, that south part of the UK, and we very much hit up a kinship, and you were a mentor, I was a mentee, and then the rest is history.
Mm-hmm. So
Um,
yeah, Chris has been my mentee for for about 6 months last year, where I just mostly chatted. Am I allowed to swear? I should have asked that before we
oh yeah,
started
totally
on
fine.
this. Just chatted a lot of shite. And somehow some of it got through, and now Chris is pretending that I was good at what I did. But I got to a very good point. This is my first ever mentorship, and I couldn't have been happier to get someone who was so passionate and excited. So overall for me, I think I've always felt that I was very intimidated by being a mentor, and I feel very much more confident doing it in the future now.
I mean, I would say on my side of things, I did not know it was your first time sort of mentoring per se. That didn't come
Mm.
across. Such was the assuredness and expertise, I think. So just to keep the things flowing, can you tell us a bit more about your role at Limit Break, and then we'll talk about the other things you do.
Sure. So I am, at the time, I was also the social media manager for Limit Break. And then this is kind of the first time I'm officially announcing it, even though this will probably be about 7 months after I announce it publicly. I'm also going to be taking part as the new branding lead for Limit Break as well, coming into the new year. Limit
Early
Break
and belated
is
congratulations.
early. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's going to be well known. We're going to be halfway through the program, I think, when this goes out. So I think I'll have already done most of my work as branding lead. But overall, I really wanted to get more involved with the scheme. I'll talk a bit about it for a touch. Limit Break is a mentorship scheme based in the UK with a focus on bringing underrepresented people more mentorship in the industry, whether you're a junior, whether you're a fresh face, or whether you're someone who's been here for years. It's always a good thing to learn and to help other people learn. And if you want to join the 2024 cohort, you have definitely missed the sign-up window if you are listening to it now. But all in all, it's a really, really wonderful way, whether you're a fresh face person or a newbie, as I've already said a second ago. But it's really important, I think. In general, I think mentorship is incredibly important. I think it's something that's very, very important to me. I try and herald it every single chance I get. Because I think that every single person, particularly in the gaming industry, because that's the thing that I know the best, is someone who knows and understands something, and that knowledge is unique, and every piece of knowledge should have freedom of sharing information, get it passed down to kind of build up and build a better industry. Of course, while I'm not begging people to trade trade secrets away, it's more situations where people can, I thought for a very long time that, oh, everyone knows the stuff that I know. It's just, I'm not a particularly special case. But I think it's really important to recognize that you are a very special case, and that everyone, I think, should be a mentor at some point in their career. Make sure you've got something under your belt first. Don't just jump into it without actually knowing anything. But just even the smallest pieces of knowledge can really heighten someone's ability or understanding of their future.
I've also realized that you won't know this, but it will have gone out by the time this goes out. But Owen Trett is also on the show.
Yes. Oh yeah.
So there's
they're amazing.
Interconnectedness to Limit Break and that as also.
They're our wonderful video editor who probably will hate me by the time it goes out, because I'm going to ask them to do a lot of stuff in the next year because I'm now in charge of the team and I'm making sure that they get their shit together. Nah, they're wonderful. But I'm there to make sure that I'm basically telling them what to do now, which is going to be, their nightmare.
I said this to them a while ago, and it may have already happened by now. When this goes, Jeremy Berby, this is great, right? I'm such a good podcast host, but I am hoping to join Limit Break as a mentor, and I would love to be involved further, just because I think it's something I'm also very passionate about. I think ultimately focusing on diversity is very important, but also that interconnectedness and just sharing of knowledge. It's how you improve pretty much any system, right? I think doing that, I think, is really good. And I think we can then sort of reverse that back. And you touched on this where you said that you didn't necessarily feel like a special case. Walk us through what was it that made you want to even be involved with something like Limit Break?
I did Limit Break 4 years ago for the first time when I was just 1 year into the industry. I'd just gotten in. I really didn't know what I was doing. And for a while, unfortunately, at the company I was working at, I had kind of been a little bit abandoned because of a lot of hiring issues and people leaving. It kind of meant that I wasn't really being taught as an intern anymore. It was just kind of get on with it. And I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. The whole point is that this was meant to be an internship. I'm meant to be taught everything. I'm not really meant to know how to do anything. So when I was able to be taken on by a mentor, who has now become a very good friend and also a housemate of mine, I was able to make a really good connection with someone who's been in the industry for a lot longer than me and actually knew a lot more about the industry, and also knew about, I think, a lot of the struggles that I think community managers particularly face, how it's quite damaging for an individual to do when they feel quite alone. How you as a community manager are by far the most public face of the company, both internally and externally. So you're facing scrutiny from every which angle possible. But yeah, overall, I think it's really key for people, particularly in mentoring, to take the leap, to reach out to someone, to ask for advice. And I feel like programs like Limit Break are really useful for helping you take that leap, because it is quite nerve-wracking going up to a stranger and be like, tell me what you know. Whereas, with Limit Break, it's, there's a more refined process to it. There's more of a conversation. It kind of gives more context to how you're meant to approach asking for mentorship and help. And it also helps you build up your personal knowledge and understanding. So if you want to go for another job, you can turn around and say, look, I've been mentored by these really amazing people. They've taught me really amazing things, and I can bring that to what I know about you and what I know about your company coming up here.
Mm-hmm. And I think one of the things I think is great is that, as you say, it kind of removes those barriers. There can be a lot of intimidation when I'm trying to say it in a way that makes sense. But there are people who are known people at Limit Break, people with names that people will recognize. And I think if you were to just see said person in the street, that would be almost intimidating, right? Whereas in this setting, it's okay to speak to them at a party,
Yeah. I think that all in all, this industry is very intimidating. Even if you're hit the mic. Even if you're in it, even if you're a part of it already, you can feel very intimidated. I joined in the pandemic, like very much in the tail end of 2020 when we thought it was ending, but it was just getting worse. And I didn't meet another game dev for a whole year of my career besides the people I worked with directly. So for me, it felt like a very lonely and empty industry that no one talked to each other in. But I just really found it hard to like reach out to people because, I didn't have any connections at all. I didn't know anyone. The only people I really were connected with were the people at my company, and they themselves were quite secular. They were quite individual in how they approach things. There wasn't a lot of outreach to other companies, so it was very hard to like know anyone or like understand how we're meant to be doing things. What is the way you're meant to be doing things and stuff like that. So when I went to the first ever event I went to was a year late after I joined the company. Went to the MCV Develop IRL event. I think it was the 30 Under 30 Awards. This was 2021. I after that very much was like, I have to do Limit Break. I met a couple of people from it. I was like, I have to do it. Like, it's so amazing to like see all these people succeed and like be interesting and be great to talk to. And I think there's so much that you can kind of work with. And I met the wonderful, amazing Lauren Kay. I don't know if you've met Lauren, but Lauren is very much a champion for new people in the industry and is also the program coordinator now for Limit Break and has very much been an influence for me and so many others. And that was one of the first people I ever met in this industry. So that was a massive leg up, I feel, to meet someone so wonderful. So I would if you're kind of looking for advice on like getting out there and stuff like that, try and seek out some events. There's a lot of digital and physical ones. So I do definitely think that it's important to kind of go to them, but also make sure you look towards programs like Limit Break. And I'm sure there's other examples that I haven't thought of right now, but there definitely are plenty of resources for game devs, new and old, to kind of network and meet people. Because I think that I have a very strong perception of networking. Networking for me is much less focused around, building up a portfolio of people that you can reach out to for work reasons. It's much more about understanding the industry as a whole and understanding the people within it, because, it's about learning from other people, but also having people that you can reach out to and, help you comprehend certain things and, being friendly with a lot of people in this industry has really helped me like kind of help to understand and where the kind of industry is going and things like that.
Sorry, I was really just like, I was intoxicated by your delightful kind of sentiment there. It was just very, very nice. So that's like one track. That's one of the many, many things that you do, and one of the many things people have to do nowadays in terms of operating within. But let's talk about your sort of day job, if you will, the day to day. But let's start from the start. What was it that got you into games, into that role? How did you know you even wanted to work in games? Let's get that origin story.
So I had a pretty shit time in the pandemic. I was a theatre student,
That
kind
makes
of
so much
tip to
sense.
toe. Yeah, I was very theatrical, and I was really hoping to work in theater as a writer and actor. Two things that are just widely considered impossible. And I was really struggling to get in anyway, I like have any talk of anything, and this was in like January of 2020. So if I was a storyteller at that point, I would be foreshadowing a great dark cloud hanging over our society coming very soon. So even when I did start to get in some conversations about moving up into being in theater and stuff like that, the conversations I was getting to was via marketing. I wanted to be a theater marketeer for a long time, selling on social media. I actively taught myself, just watch YouTube videos, and talk to people on the marketing course in our university. Like, give me some tidbits of like what you're doing. Give me a quick summary of a couple of lectures that you've seen that you like. And then I kind of used that to talk my way into a volunteer position with a company called the Greenhouse Theatre, which was a zero waste sustainable theatre company.
Nice.
where they like were crazy. They were wonderful. The whole thing was they would build a theater to perform in from recycled materials, and then take that down and rebuild it somewhere else, and continue to improve it and use like natural elements and be completely zero waste. And they were awesome. I loved working with them for such a long time, but it gave me a really good basis to get into it. And then when I finished my university degree, I went to work in a call center, and I was kind of, while I was working there, I was trying to hunt down some theater jobs. But because of the pandemic, there were no theater jobs. There was nothing to sell, therefore there was no marketing.
Mm-hmm.
And it was kind of at that point that I made the conclusion that because I had been trained in marketing, I could work anywhere. That's kind of a great thing about marketing, is that when you teach yourself marketing, you can sell anything. And that's
I'm really
kind
like
of
envisioning that Wolf of Wall Street, like sell me this pen kind of
sell me
thing,
this pen bullshit,
right?
kind of. I mean, yeah, I mean, it's kind of that. But like, I could probably have gone to work as a New York financier, which, if I wanted to do that, because I could have a leg in by being like, I know how to sell your company. I know how to talk to people about it. So when I had that, I was like, what do I love? Video games. I play video games all the time. I love gaming. I'd grown up with video games. I feel like I was very much the generation where video games. I remember the transition of it being not cool in middle school to cool in high school, where it went from if you talked about video games too much, you're a bit of a dork, to, oh my god, Bryn has the new Halo. Let's talk to them.
Yeah.
And then I knew I loved video games, and I knew I very much wanted to get them. So for me, I just started sending off CVs like mad, and I started talking to as many companies as I possibly could for like junior and internship level positions. And I managed to get one at Team Junkfish, the makers of Monstrum, in which I worked there for a year and a half, which was interesting because I think it was very much a like hard and fast dev cycle, which was like, they were a couple months out from their new game release that they'd been working on for about 4 or 5 years. So for me, it was like, oh, the next stage is going to be, launching a game into early access is one of the first things you do in the industry is a nightmare. Like, it was so insane how to like get onto that level kind of immediately. But yeah, as I kind of concluded, I knew I started to crack social media through working in that job. And I was very happy that I was getting paid to do it, because I had kind of been trying to crack it for a long time with no income and having to work in a very, very just awful call center where I would get the most horrible calls every day. That like, it was just kind of a great way to get out. And when I was able to, when I felt like I had learned a lot from them, I wanted to kind of move on to a bigger challenge. So I joined P-Cube Games, which was moving from a dev house to a publisher. And I would always kind of say to new people in the industry, get into a publisher as your first industry job. I think it is a really good place to start, because you learn a lot quickly. You don't really have time to like sit around and be like, what will we do in a couple months? It's like, oh, we're launching a game today. Cool. And we're also launching one next week. Cool. And then in a month, we've got 2 big game launches, and they both have to go really well. And it's a place where they'll have a lot of resources, hopefully, to support you learning quickly. And I'm a big fan of like, getting a lot of knowledge up there quickly. But one thing I will say about my kind of time there, and this isn't really a fault on P-Cube, even though it sounds like it is at the start. So shout out them. I love them dearly. I think something that I learned at that stage that I think is a really important thing that I learned is that I wasn't hot shit. I really thought that, like, I'd been there for a year and a half, and I was like, I am top tier level marketing when it comes to social media, and it comes to key expansion.
I'm the dog's bollocks type of business.
I'm the best that I could possibly be. To a point where convincing myself of that, I think slightly because I'd surrounded myself with a lot of yes people who joined the industry at the same time as me, and they're like, yeah, that's how we're meant to be doing it. We're young and we get it, and like, we absolutely get it. And although there's definitely things that I disagreed with upper management, in retrospective, and I also learned this while I was there as well, I wasn't really. I just had happened to be moved up to a position in a really good, timely manner without taking time out of my own life to actually teach myself things. And it's a very difficult thing to do, is to teach yourself things when you're working in a job, because you have to also do the job at the same time. So that is kind of the other downside of the publisher, is it's a lot harder to teach yourself things. You very much have to learn as you go. But I still think I did love that experience as a new person. I think it took my first ever boss to message me back after I sent them a string of DMs being like, oh my God, they're not listening to me. They're not even listening to me. I've got so many, like, these ideas would save everything. If we did this, it would change the game. It would make everyone want to buy it immediately. If we did this, it would be, and my boss went, no, it wouldn't. I went, huh? And they're like, you don't fucking know what you're talking about. I'm reading this shit back, and it's like, it's a junior level speaking, and you're now mid-level. I was like, oh my God. And that very brutal honesty was really important for me, because I had to kind of realize that I wasn't hot shit. I had a lot to learn, and I had a lot of time. I really needed to listen to other people. And I think that even now I take that forward to everything I do. You know, I am at a position now in my current job where I even have I have assistants that work under me now. And it could be so easy, I feel, to kind of have that hot shit mentality once again, where I'm like, I'm teaching these people and they're going to figure it out because I'm so good. But it's still, to be honest, I've really grown out of that a lot. And I'm learning that they're teaching me so much. You know, they're much more tuned into certain aspects of social media, that by being kind of in the trenches for so long, understanding social media, I'm very much able to now stick my head up and look where we need to go. And through that, I'm not turning around to them and being like, this is how you're meant to do it. I'm saying, and this is a really important thing for someone who's, I think, mentoring people, not this is how you're meant to do it. It's, this is how I've been doing it. What do you think? I think it's something that, like, you can't say that your view of, especially marketing, that is such a no single answer discipline, is a place where you could say, well, this is how everyone does it, or this is how you're meant to do it. It's a place where you say, this is how I've been doing it. It's been working on this ways. What do you think? Do you think that you would do something like that? And if they say, yeah, you've got another person under your belt doing the same things as you, therefore you've got more things to look at when it's being done. Therefore it's being done over and over again. Therefore you have more ability to both praise and criticize yourself through those things coming up. And if they say, no, I've seen it done in this way, then it's a new way to do it. And that's the most amazing thing. And I think when people said to me at PQ particularly, no, that's not how we're going to do it. That's not how you're meant to do it. I was like, this is how you're meant to do it. I get it. I've talked to 3 people who are also juniors like me, and they said they get it. And for me, it's like, learn from your friends for sure, but also accept that some people might have been there a bit longer and they get a bit more. And while you can definitely help to influence certain things, it's not always right. You're not always correct. And yes, you can always regret in the future, I wish we'd done it like this. But then you can turn around in the next project and be like, we didn't do it like this last time. I think it didn't work out because we could have done it a bit more in that direction. Could we try it doing it this direction? Which is why also, again, going back to working at publishers is, I think, very useful for your early stage career. It's because that next marketeer wise, that next opportunity come pretty quickly, because you'll probably in about 2 months have another launch. And then you can say in between that time, like, we didn't do it this time. Could we do it this time? You know, if you're working in game dev more directly, I fear that you will end up, you know, you'll say, oh, last time it didn't work out that as much. Can we do it next time? Also, it's been 2 years, so who knows? Like, it could have, like, times could have so completely changed that my thing is completely irrelevant. So it kind of doesn't really give you the chance to test out and experiment, I feel, unless you're in active release mode.
There is something almost like Greek myth in, like, that journey of, like, yeah, I know everything, I'm the best, to, like, now being like a mentor, right? Like, that's really brilliant. I'm kind of interested from you know, if I don't want to phrase it as like, if, you know, because you touched on this, if someone wanted to get into what you're doing, I'm kind of interested almost in, technically, are there any sort of tools or skills you would particularly advise people go out and learn? Because I think you touched on this, it's really hard to almost like have the time and capacity to go and upskill oneself when you're doing it any day job, right? So are there any sort of like softwares, tools, skills that you would recommend people kind of train up on, get some XP in?
So I would probably say, and I've talked to a few people wanting to get into community management, particularly and social media management, and they say to me, I really don't. I have no experience, and I have no way of getting experience. And I have to say, I don't. That's not really true. Social media and community management is one of the few things in games where you can actually give yourself experience with no other requirements, which is you build your own community, whether that is centered around yourself or something you're a fan of. It's proving that you can build a community around something. When I was 16, this is something that really got me into conversations when I started talking about it. When I was 16, I started a Facebook fan group for the artist Rex Orange County, an artist I was a massive fan of at the time. And I took this from a 2-member, me and a random guy I met in another fan group, 2-member thing to, I think, I look back at it now, even though I don't really use it as much, I think it's got nearly like 40,000 members in there. Because I saw a niche, I saw an artist that a few people liked. He was actually massive in the Philippines. I learned from this, because he got a lot of people from the Philippines joining the group, which led us to, bring on like someone from the Philippines to help us moderate it. And it's conversations like that and discussions like that actually someone looks at it, it's like, oh, that's just community management. You're doing it already. And when I was doing that, I was 16 and I built something, within a year up to like nearly 20,000 members or something, by hosting, posting the music videos every time they came out, having like song discussion weekly things, and like, album speculation of like, oh, he's released a new album, what kind of things do you think? And like having that, not even related to games, but going into a junior level is so much experience to put that on paper and to quantify that. So for me, it's getting into building your own community. And I see a lot of amazing people, up and coming people, who have really done that through streaming, through building like a little Twitch community around themselves, around their own personality. And of course, people love that because it shows that you're a confident person who can be in conversations and talk and maybe even stream for the company itself. But if you want to get into that kind of position immediately, it's building a community yourself, because you're going to have to do it in the job. So if you're trying to get into this industry where by building communities and you haven't built a community yourself, when it is something that anyone could do, really, even if it doesn't go well, it's proving that you had like the motivation to do it. I tried to build a streaming community around myself. I maybe got like 30 people in there, but I could talk about that. I could talk about how I built those 30 people, how about 10 of them were my friends and 20 of them were strangers. So actually 20 people came to me who haven't ever heard from me before. And I haven't streamed in years, but to this day, like, I know if I came back, I bet one of them would jump in, the stranger I didn't really know. And to me, it was like, oh, I built something there, and I built a community around something that I didn't really care about that much. I just wanted to try it. And, I think it's really important that you yourself are able to actively pursue that. In terms of programs that always sound good, social media tools are great. Things like Hootsuite is a great free one. Use it for your own social media for a bit and just like test it out instead of like tweeting dumb shit from actual Twitter or X. Go through Hootsuite or possibly Metricool, I think has a good free program. Just to prove that you get the systems, and it's a bit piano-y in these social media analytics systems and things, because actually they are all kind of the same with a couple extra tricks up their sleeves, a couple of them. But once you know one, you kind of know them all. So, but yeah, being able to turn around and be like, yeah, I get Hootsuite in and out. They'll also be able to get the really expensive ones that top tier companies use. You'll get the understanding of that and be able to pick it up quickly. So making sure you're jumping in and kind of going through that. I think the final tip I kind of have is some kind of graphic experience is not required. Like being good at graphic design or Photoshop and stuff. It's not required. Not every job needs it, but has it always been a leg up for me? Has it always, just even to this day, being able to turn around and be like, yeah, I know I can tip the iceberg of Premiere Pro. Companies will go, cool. Yeah, that means we can take maybe an hour a week off of our video editors and graphic designers. Because even if you don't really know anything about them, you will probably need to know how to ask someone to do it. So you need to know like what you're asking for. So you need to know at least something about these graphic things, because you're going to be, requesting. And some of the really easy way to start before you jump in deep to Photoshop, because Photoshop's very expensive, ridiculously so, is things like Canva, is things like Microsoft Paint. Both of these programs are free and easy to just make yourselves little things. Although there's definitely more complicated things that you yourself can make. In the bigger programs, having basic skills in Canva can very much get you a leg up, because I, to this day, will make shitty Canva pieces for really important, really, really important assets and send it to the graphic designer and be like, can you do this? And they'll be like, yep, I get exactly what you mean, because they're a graphic designer. So giving them the basics allows them to be really creative within a field,
Yeah.
So giving them a written brief and a basic concept is a really useful thing. So there's my kind of 3 big tips: build your own community, no matter how shit it is. Learn a little bit of Hootsuite or Metricool or social media analytics in general. And then learn a tiny bit of graphic design or a basic understanding of graphic design, so that you can have a solid conversation about it when you get into the job.
And I think that's like, really valuable. And the kind of touch points on that is like, even if something doesn't go well, being able to articulate what you have learned is almost as important as the actual thing itself. And like, I feel like a lot of, we're on my podcast. I do the whole streaming business, that type of thing. Like, cross posting takes a while. Using a tool that does that, like, it just saves you time, even if you're actually editing a few things and changing the characters. And also that broader, like, I do a little bit in paint.net, and I know I do a bit of Vegas and a bit of, SoundForge, these types, like, bits and bobs of experience that, like, in a pinch will, as you say, help someone more experienced to get the idea of what I'm after. Which
Yeah, like 100% with you.
And ultimately, assuming you have time and like the capacity, emotionally or mentally, I do think like there's so many great resources online, so many guides and tutorials. Like, if you can niche out a little bit of that upskilling time, and I would always advocate this. I think not enough people maybe ask the question to like where they work and be like, can I have time to train myself? Because at the time, you're saying I'm going to become a more skilled employee for you, right? Like, almost like regardless of what the job is. And I feel like if you say, can you give me X hours a week over the course of a few weeks, it's always worth asking those type of questions.
I think that's very dependent on what you're currently doing. For example, like when I was working in the call center, I wasn't teaching myself how to do social media management because I was working in the call center. So I couldn't, like, between calls, I'd maybe have half a minute between a call to jump before I had to jump into another call to talk to someone. So I just couldn't possibly teach myself anything. So it does require a bit of drive to take your free time out, which was really tough. I'd come back from like a nearly 10-hour shift, speaking to some of the most horrible people ever. And having to get out of that and then sit there and be like, okay, I gotta watch a YouTube video on, because one good bit of motivation is I needed to get out of there. And I didn't want to jump into another shit job. So I wanted to do something really exciting, and I had the marketing skills already from teaching myself theater. So I was like, I gotta learn a bit about games. I gotta figure out some of this game stuff. I didn't even have a PC at the time. I remember that was when I got my job. That was a really big purchase I made, is I got a really hefty PC that I now have to this day, that I used pretty much all of my call center money that I earned from that summer job to buy a stupidly chunky PC that has still served me almost 4-ish years later.
Nice.
But yeah, for me, it was very much like, I'm also not saying you have to have a PC to be a social media manager. The work company I was working for required playtesting from all the employees. So they were like, you're going to have to playtest. And I was like, yeah, I'm planning on getting a PC anyway, as I was starting to look up what a good PC was. I didn't even know. But yeah.
Okay, and I think like that's really great. That's really practical. But now I kind of want to change track a little bit, and want to talk about you. And you've already said like you do a lot, but also like you're so passionate and you are willing to like upskill and train, and you have that motivation. But what do you do when you're not working? How do you unwind?
Um, oh, I often take a job. I often take a break from my video games job to play video games, which is something I was nervous about when I joined. Because I was pretty convinced that by being in the video game industry, I wasn't going to play video games anymore. I think that kind of comes from my mum being a chef and getting home from work and being like, well, you're cooking because I've just done it for a job. So, and I was like, oh yeah, cool. So I was convinced that it would be a similar thing where I would come home and never want to play video games again. So I was like, I got to pick up some new hobbies. I got to get into, but I play more games now because I'm really invested in the process of the industry and what we can, where it's going. So I probably play I'd probably say like triple the amount of games I used to play. I was a total AAA person before I joined the industry. And now I love indie games so much. Like I'm very much a pick up for 2 or 3 hours and never touch it again type person and think it was amazing. I'd be like, that was awesome. I barely touched it.
I mean, we are spoiled for choice nowadays.
Oh
There's
God,
so
yeah.
many great games.
One of my comfort games I'd probably say is the XCOM series, which has always been one of my favorite series of games just ever. I very much enjoy the tactical elements of a lot of games. I like strategic turn-based combat. I also like that I can make everyone I know into soldiers in XCOM. I don't know if you know about that. Have you played XCOM?
I've played a little bit, yeah. And like, is that not more brutal when something goes wrong though?
Oh yeah, it's horrible. I've been playing on Switch. XCOM 2 is on Switch now, which has been running awfully, but still just as fun. And I've got everyone I know is pretty much in it. You're in it.
Oh no.
I've got everyone. But you've survived actually. You're a psionic warrior.
Nice.
And you've got a snake outfit, and that's kind of the whole that's your whole character right now. But because the switch load times are way longer, I can't really save scum. So for the first time in probably ever in my history of XCOM, when people die, they actually die. Like there's a lot of actual deaths that I've had to the point where there's 2 pages of memorial people on the thing where I've lost. And I look through it and I'm like, oh my God, wait, these are real people that I know in real life. Like, would they think I'm weird for like having them dead in a game that I didn't go back and save them? But yeah, if anyone's listening to this who is a friend of mine, I guarantee I've made you in the game, and I almost guarantee you're dead. The vast majority of people I know have died. I've got more dead soldiers than alive ones right now. So
that is one of the exact reasons I love doing this show because you love things like that.
But I find that very comforting. I love my Switch so much. I love a good on the go game. Someone suggested getting a Steam Deck recently, and I've considered it, but for me, any game I want to play on the go is on Switch. And any game that I want to sit down and play would be what I'd pick up on my Steam Deck. Like Baldur's Gate 3, I played 200 hours of that last year. Someone said, oh, you got to get a Steam Deck so you can play it on the go. And I'm like, no, I want to sit in my room with the lights off and my head laser focused into the monitor. I can't be on a train and playing Baldur's Gate 3. Like I am so invested in it that I will miss every stop. I will I will not be able to concentrate on anything else. Where like with Switch games, it's very much games that I can kind of like, I love a mindless game. You know what I mean? I like a game where you don't have to think too much. I've got a game called Good Pizza, Great Pizza I've been playing for recently, which is just you make pizzas for people.
Nice.
But they're total dicks about it. They come in and they're like, I one supreme with no cheese, and I'm like, what's a supreme? I don't have a menu. and then if you ask them, what do you mean? They're like, ugh, everything on the pizza except cheese, and I'm like, okay, I guess I should have figured that out, but yeah, some people want bread pizza, which is nothing. You just put the dough through and give it to them.
I mean,
someone came through the other and was like, can you give me bread pizza and can you burn it? And I was like, yeah, sure, you freak. Here's your bread pizza burnt.
Just burned out, like.
Yeah.
People, even people in video games, fascinating.
But yeah, I think games are a very big part of my life. I'm incredibly competitive as a person. and it's very funny because my partner is not competitive, but is also better at me at most things. So it kills me because she'll be winning, and I'll be like, and she'll be like, "This is so fun," and she'll be losing. I'll be like, "Yes, got you," and she'll be like, "Okay." I'm like, "No, give me back the energy."
Oh, I feel like maybe it's because you just mentioned the pizza game, but I'm now imagining like how would playing something like Overcooked go? Like,
Oh, I couldn't play it.
couldn't.
I tried actually with some friends, and I became less friendly very quickly. Have you seen the show The Bear? That's me playing Overcooked.
I do
I'm
very
like
much take
yelling, running
like
around.
like the Gordon Ramsay kind of approach. Like,
Yeah, yeah,
right,
yeah.
one burger, no salad. Now send it. You know you're on
Part of
meat.
that
Do the
is
meat.
that's a very unique case for me as well because I grew up in my mum's kitchen, like working full time with her. Whenever I came, like if I was a weekend away from school or anything, like it'd be either dishwashing or cooking or like running around and serving. And for me, I think it's a great thing to like grow up with. I'm a very big fan of young people doing work, not child labor, but I'm not. Don't clip that.
No. In context, we all knew what you meant. It's all good.
In context, I'm a big fan of like growing up and getting like youthful jobs like that. Working outside my family as well in kitchens was also great. But I very much quickly became a Gordon Ramsay, and I'm still a bit like that if I'm cooking because I'm like get off. I'm zoned in. I have to cook this in a very specific way, or I'm gonna really experiment with it. And if you touch it, you're gonna break it.
On sort of like games, have you got? I mean, Baldur's Gate. It's one of the biggest games of the past year. I think it's going to continue to be for a while. If I'm honest,
Yeah, probably.
it's on my naughty list, and I'm not touching it until post PhD because I already opened the Final Fantasy 14 floodgates, and that was something I shouldn't have done. This isn't about me. This is your episode, Bryn. So, have you got any games that you're sort of looking forward to that are coming up?
XCOM 3 when it happens.
Nice.
I'm still hopeful.
Nice.
Come on, give it to me. Just desperate for XCOM 3 to happen. I think about it so much, how much that game has like influenced how I look at games. I think it's so amazing. I think it's so well made. And it's so like replayable, like as a single player game. There's not many single player games that I consider replayable. Because I like having that like single player moment for myself. And of course, there's a lot out there. I'm saying very personally, this is not like in general. I think there's a lot of single player games that are incredibly replayable, especially like roguelikes and stuff. But for me, it's like there's very few that appeal to me as like a constant go around. I'm not really sure. To be honest, I'm really awful as a marketeer for knowing what's coming up. Which is definitely something I should know for sure. But I kind of I'm always very behind on games. I actually find like Baldur's Gate 3 is a really bad example. It's a really unique case for me because I played it in the year it came out. Because my second favorite game of 2024 was Spider-Man. Miles Morales that came out like 5 or 6 years beforehand. So everyone was talking about Spider-Man 2. I was like, yo, Spider-Man's Miles Morales is awesome, guys. Why did no one tell me about this? I picked that up and I was like, this is so fun. And I kind of played through a lot of that last year. And yeah, I'm always really behind on things. Mainly because I haven't got a PS5 and I'm not really a next-gen console gamer, but yeah.
I'm kind of interested to probe, but this is a slightly random question, but like in your marketing experience, do you have that kind of thing that I'm aware happens with like albums where they're like, right, Michael Bublé is dropping an album in November, so no one else release anything this week. We're gonna delay, we're gonna move. Like, does that happen with games? Like, did people see Baldur's Gate coming and go, right, lads, just we'll leave it, give it a couple months?
I think it really depends on the game. Because when you list off like what the most anticipated type games are and stuff like that, I'll give an example. We released a game called Cavern of Dreams last year, and there was a fair bit of fear internally because on the Wednesday of that week, the new Sonic Mania game had released. On the Thursday, we were releasing Cavern of Dreams. Then on the Friday, Super Mario Wonder was coming out. So there was this huge thing internally, like, oh my God, these games, they're gonna blow us out the water. And I definitely was the person who put their hand up and said, if these games came out 3 months before we release this game, they would also blow us out the water then. The astronomical comparison is very crazy in like in indie games particularly, which is like look towards what your competitors are doing, not what the game industry as a whole is doing. I would pretty happily release an indie game on the same day as Baldur's Gate 3 because you're not going to take people away from Baldur's Gate 3 to turn to your indie game, even if it came out a month afterwards. So why are you worried if you're going to do it on the day? The only thing that I would avoid on things like Baldur's Gate 3 is press is the kind of the bigger fear there. So if you don't think you were going to get much press to begin with, don't worry about it. But if you thought you were going to get a lot of press with your game, there are certain games you want to avoid, and these are what I like to call the guide games. Now, these are games that when they release, publications like IGN and TechRaptor are going to turn around and make 100,000 how-to guides on playing through it. So when you got like your Baldur's Gate 3 and your Starfield, there will be journalists who've been playing that game for like hundreds of hours already, writing guides to every little detail, so that when someone Googles how to do this in the game in Starfield, that's what comes up because that gets them clicks, and that's a really good thing for them. I think that's a wonderful thing to do because it gets them a lot of traffic. 100%. It will cover up your game no matter what your game is. So if your game is very press dependent, indie or AAA or AA, whatever, avoid big how-to games where it's going to be a lot of guides. You know, when Alan Wake 2 came out, obviously amazing, absolutely phenomenal game. There wasn't loads of how-to guides kind of on that game because it's quite linear. It's quite straightforward. So while there's definitely like how to get through this chapter, there wasn't as many as you might expect. You know, it could all fit really into one or two articles of how to play through this game.
How to use secondary item. Press the L2
button. It's stuff like that. That's not crazy. Where with Baldur's Gate 3, it's like the how-to guides were unbelievably huge. Like it's bigger than you could possibly imagine, even for like the first act of the early access game. You know, there was just, you know, you would be demolished in the press by it. Like you wouldn't be covered at all. But yeah, it's really, you know, it's about looking at the landscape, really. You know, I think that I can really only talk to indie games. It's very hard to talk to AAA because I've never worked with AAA before. But when I talk to indie games, I'm like, you know, even when we release a game, okay, let's make a pitch of a random game. So it's a wholesome cooking game. We talked about cooking already. Like a wholesome cooking game. Bryn's Kitchen, yeah. Releasing that in like June. And then what's an upcoming game? The new Call of Duty is coming out on the same day. There's no crossover in that audience. Well, there's very, very, very few people whose financial decision when they come to buying the game is going to be, should I get Call of Duty or Bryn's Kitchen? It's so hard to decide which game I would prefer. It's that decision is made for them. However, if Chris's Kitchen is coming out on the same day, that's when I'd start to panic, because then you'll get people being like, oh, do I want this version or this version of a pretty similar game? At which point, you know, if we said release in June, I don't think typically you won't ever announce the release date yet, but if you haven't announced the release date, internally move it. Be like, Chris's Kitchen coming out on the same day currently. Why are we going to bother like affecting both their sales and ours? Because if you're competing against someone, you're hurting both of you.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think like it's very, we're not going to see a Barbenheimer. You know what I mean? It's very rare that you're going to see a Barbenheimer in video games, I feel, because there's so much more, I think, time put into marketing because it takes so much longer to make the games. So like a lot more, you know, it's in the public eye for a lot longer, typically. So you won't really get people who will try and create a Barbenheimer kind of in the video games. I could be completely wrong. You know, you can't predict what's going to happen, but I don't think that would happen. Shoot me in the face if I'm wrong.
I'm also kind of intrigued. This is completely offbeat, and we'll move on. But like I like love tactical RPGs. I'm currently playing Final Fantasy Tactics Advance. I love the Fire Emblem series. I own, I think, all of the XCOM games. Yeah. But
play them.
Well, like I don't know where to start. Like the base building, apparently, like you best should just follow a guide with the first one. There was that one that's like a bit easier to get into, where like you can also play as like alien species, like
Oh,
XCOM.
I love Chimera Squad. Don't play it
That's the one.
first.
That's the one. Yeah.
It doesn't really make sense, I don't think, because it's really based in it's really heavily based off the events of XCOM 2. And I love all the nods to XCOM 2 within it, so I think that you miss out on a lot if you skip XCOM 2 through it. I think that although I'm a big fan of XCOM 1, I can't believe I'm just talking about XCOM all day, but I'm a big fan of XCOM 1. My suggested play order would be XCOM 2 with no DLC.
No DLC.
XCOM 1 with all DLC, because I think the DLC makes that game a lot better.
Yeah.
And then go back to XCOM 2, play it again with the DLC.
Right.
With the War of the Chosen particularly, and also the Alien Hunters and stuff you can take or leave, but especially War of the Chosen, which is unbelievably good. And I think you need to, I was talking to that for ages. I think that War of the Chosen is so amazing that you need to know what you were missing for it to be even better. So when you play it originally, you play XCOM 2, because I think it's so polished, the original XCOM 2 anyway, and it adds so much with it. And then once you beat War of the Chosen, go play XCOM Chimera Squad. That's those are my piece of advice.
I'll add it to the list, because I know it's like one
that's
of those
my official turn order.
I know that they're good, but like I've just been like so intimidated to be like, oh, like I'm really terrible at base building. Generally, like, any game that involves me to like build stuff.
It's a good part of the game, but it's not the game, if I'm honest.
The tactical movie.
Feel free to look up a guide. I agree. Yeah, that's so fun.
Yeah,
I love that stuff.
So these are sort of two of my like just favorite questions that I ask on the show. But the first one is, if you had no limitations, you have full access to people, resources, time, money, whatever. What's one blue sky project idea you'd like to do? Apart from XCOM 3.
XCOM 3. Blue sky project I'd like to do. Oh wow. Infinite money, infinite people, infinite time.
I'm gonna like tease you a little bit. Like, you could open a theater company. You could, like, I don't know, open a publishing house for books or something. I don't know, anything you care about, you know.
I think I'd love to direct my own studio. That'd be amazing. I'd love to have my own studio for making games in. I think that I like little quick games a lot. I like games that you can pick up and put down pretty quickly, that that appeal to you, that have a great little story, and then you don't need to touch it again. So I'd like to make a studio that makes like 2 games a year, you know what I mean? And they're both like little fun, cute things. I'd love to do what I did in Game Dev Tycoon. I don't know if you ever played Game Dev Tycoon, but I'd love for that to just be my life. Nice. It's like fun that studio that like just like sees like, what's trendy, let's do that, and let's do our spin on it, and then it's like the reviews come out, you're like, next game. And yeah, but I don't know, I think that'd be fun. I'd love to lead my own studio.
Okay, no, I think that's a great shout, you know. This one, you've touched on a few people already with like your various sort of expertise and things, but is there someone you'd like to give a little shout out to, shine the spotlight on, who maybe you feel doesn't get enough praise or accolade necessarily? We've had answers to
I'm not
this
saying you, Chris.
Well, I didn't expect you to. I do pretty well with accolades. Hashtag I don't want to win. We've had answers on this ranging from like people's like parents to like spouses to like, you know, like political figures and like colleagues and stuff. So it's very much, you know, a fun little. You know.
I think for me, I'd love to give a shout out to every single graphic designer I've ever worked with who has to put up with me. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Just every single graphic designer or video editor that has to listen to my ideas and actually make them happen. Thank you for being so patient, for so kind, so not stabby, and being so creative, just kind of in general. my current graphic designer is Stu Townsend and Daxter. Shout out to both of them. I think they're both phenomenal creatives, and I think that they should. I think that I think graphic gets a bit of unsung praise sometimes. I think there's a big thing in the industry, just kind of in general, which is like marketing. I think is one of the few things that gets away with this, that doesn't really get affected by this, and I think it's something important to say towards all the other disciplines, is that I learned it from theater. I think it was about sound and lighting design. I heard it said said you only notice sound and lighting design when it's shit. Which is kind of the reason that so many people are unsung in this industry. And I think with marketing, you notice a lot of good shit, like a lot. Like you'll be like, oh, this was really good. And I kind of feel like there's a lot of unsung creatives in the games industry, especially people like graphic designers, where it's like, their work is so amazing because you don't really notice how good it is. Like it's just blown you away. And that's kind of like with musicians, especially in the industry, sound designers, so many sound designers working in game dev. Oh my God, like they are the most amazing creatives, like the most brilliant people that you will never even realize you've listened to,
So soundbar on this, sidebar rather, soundbar, look at me. I went to a panel at PAX West in 2023 that was like on game effect sound design. And like it was like this is a sound effect, we're gonna recreate it right now with stuff we have in the room. And they just got random people to come up and make random sound effects, like a crinkle of a packet, like I think one guy was in cosplay and like had like a fake sword, and they made the sheath sound of like the sword going in and out the sheath, and then just the technique to digitally alter it and put these sounds together to match up with what my eyes were seeing. Wild, phenomenal.
Yeah.
Like absolutely, like I could never in my days, never.
And then the majority of people who hear that when it's in the game won't even notice how good it is. They'd only notice it if it was really shit.
Yeah.
Just such a shame. Unless they have an ear for it. Some people really have an ear for good sound design, which I also think is, they're wonderful because they help to get praised. But I really wish that there was easier ways to notice how good certain things are.
Yeah, I feel like, I mean, maybe it's just because, like, I'm a bit blind, but, like, I always like to focus on sounds. Like, if the sound effects in a game are good and satisfying, that's always something I pick up on. Like, especially if there's, like, is a combat, like, does a crit sound nice? Does that, like, does that placate me when I hear a crit, those type of things. No, so that's a great answer. My next sort of few are a little bit quick fire, but
Sure.
if we springboard, we springboard. You are going to a biome of your choice. I personally wouldn't go to a desert island. I'll be no probs. A biome of your choice, and you're going to take with you one album, one film/TV box set selection, whatever, a book, a game. What are you taking with you? Where are you going?
All right, let's start with an album. The album I would take would be Illinois by Sufjan Stevens. An album I will never get tired of. A phenomenal artist, creative. That I think that I've listened to that album probably 100,000 times. Every time I find something and I'm like, what? How did I miss this? And for me, that's a great. Also, it's like over an hour long, so like I could definitely go for it. Movie.
Well, I've got to inquire because that was
okay.
There was a lot in there, so I'm like, okay, well, what type of sound is it? Like, feed me a little bit more. I'm curious.
So Illinois is a concept album about events that happen in the state of Illinois, from serial killers like John Wayne Gacy Jr. To Mary Todd, from UFO sightings that happen there. There's a song, one of my favorite song titles is a 2-minute long song. I'm going to read the full title to you, which is The Black Hawk War, or How to Demolish an Entire Civilization and Still Feel Good About Yourself in the Morning.
That's excellent.
Oh, it's longer. It's so long. One sec. I'm looking up the full title. The Black Hawk War. Full title. Sorry, bad podcast. You're listening to nothing.
No, I mean, this is like everyone is on tenderhooks. They want to know.
It's called The Black Hawk War, or How to Demolish an Entire Civilization, Still Feel Good About Yourself in the Morning, or We Apologize for the Inconvenience, but You're Going to Have to Leave Now, or I Have Fought the Big Knives and They Will Continue to Fight Until They're Off Our Lands. And the entire song is a choir of people going, la, 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 and that's it, the whole thing. And it's
Nice.
amazing. It's sitting there like, whoa. There's this jaunty, I don't know, I don't even know what instrument it is. I think it's a trumpet or something that's going in the background, and then eventually the drums come in, and it's so like triumphant, and it's all these moments that happen kind of throughout the histories. But I love Sufjan Stevens. His new album made me weep recently. But yeah, please listen to Illinois. I think it was the first album that made me like music. Like I liked music for sure, but like it's first time that I was like, oh, I like this. Like this is the thing that's for me. Like I was a top 40 charts kid who was like, what's trending? Like what is going to be playing at the disco that I can sing? And I think I listened to this on the coach back from France on like the French speaking trip. The coach back from Paris, and I put my headphones in and I laid back and I closed my eyes. I felt like I was like living a dream. Like I could see every little moment, which is interesting to me because I have that thing, I can't remember what the name of it is, where when you close your eyes, you just see black. Like I can't imagine things, like visually imagine things. I can describe things very well, but when I close my eye to this, I could just imagine so much, even though I couldn't actually see it.
Nice.
But yeah, listen to Illinois.
I'll give
I think I think it's called Come On Feel the Illinois in some places, but Illinois is what it's called on Spotify, for example.
Nice. Okay. Sorry, that was a sidebar, but I love music, so I'm really interested to explore. And concept albums are so difficult to like actually pull off. I think so many people.
Oh my god, yeah.
Well intentionally like go down that, and then maybe don't quite nail it, or like
he's got so many good concept albums. There's like, The Age of Odds is amazing. The one that came out 2 years ago, I'm trying to remember the name of it, that he did with Angelo De Augustine, A Beginner's Mind, which is just all films he likes.
nice.
Just he'd like, it's not like a theme song for the film, but it's like how the film made him feel and what the moments of that are. So there's so many just amazing moments in that album. Like yeah, I love Sufjan Stevens, man. I'm such a dork about him. There's a really funny playlist which is Sufjan Stevens Catholic or gay? Because there's always that, it's always a debate, is like, is this song about being in love with Jesus or like in love with Jesus?
Oh, okay. And those are two very different things.
Yeah.
So, all right, so I'm gonna try and get my own train back on track, right? Film or TV, which you'll be picking? But the general rule is if it comes as a physical box that you can have it. So what are you
I would have to pick a TV show, even though I love film so much. But there's very few films that I can watch over and over and over again. Can I pick both? Can I pick one of each?
Sure,
a film and a
not?
TV show?
Why not?
I guess the film would be Interstellar.
Oh, okay.
Just because for me, every twist, every turn still is so enjoyable. And one, it's long, so I'd be pretty happy to have that on like a desert biome I'm in, where I have to like sit there and endure film and media for a long time. The weird hellscape you put me in.
No, it's meant to be a pleasurable hellscape. You're going like for a holiday, like.
Yeah. Come on, feel the Illinois. No, what am I speaking about? Sorry. Yes, Interstellar. I think it's so good. I really love that film. I really love the kind of trans-dimensional elements of it, of like, humans coming back to help humans. And I highly suggest anyone to watch it. I think there's so many good performances in it. And then TV wise, I think I'd say BoJack Horseman.
Oof. Bryn, you're going with like entries that like hit you once and then hit you again just to make sure.
Yeah. I think because because there's a lot of comedy in that show, so there's a lot of lightness that, like, if I had to watch it over and over again, like, I'd still find so many bits funny. But I think there's a lot of really good reflections on, like, creativity and kind of like masculinity at large that, like, has, like, really, like, affected how I think about masculinity. BoJack Horseman is a terrible person. I want to put that out there before I talk about, like, how the show taught me a lot about masculinity. I think it teaches you how bad it is.
Yeah.
And also kind of like how a lot of like issues with like neoliberalism are about how, you know, good someone can think they're being without really recognizing what they're actually doing. Which there's another show that I'm watching right now called The Curse, which I highly suggest, which is another show about like a liberal couple who are fully gentrifying a neighborhood, but they're doing it in the name of like the native people there. And it's so obvious what they're doing, but they clearly don't know. They don't know that they're gentrifying it. They're like, oh no, of course that's not what we're doing. I think there's a lot. It's a really good show. But yeah, BoJack Horseman, I think there's so much there to think about that really still comes back to me constantly.
That is like on my list of shows that, like, next flight I go on, like Transatlantic or something, I'm gonna just download that and just watch it.
Yeah, it's a binger. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very good. It's very, very good. It's the toughest bit is that the first season is the worst season. Which is so odd for a TV show because normally the first season is one of the best. But the first season sucks compared to the rest of it. I think I remember the Rotten Tomato scores where it was like season 1 like 60%, season 2 100, season 3 100, season 4 100, season 5 100, and it's like the rest of them are so highly rated, and this is like it's just so poorly rated comparably. Yeah.
And then I'm gonna guess this will not be a surprise based on previous things you've said in the episode. What game are you gonna take with you, Bryn? Or should I say which XCOM are you taking?
That's unfair because I've been playing XCOM recently. So if I actually have to think about it, like, it's just because I've recently become really obsessed with it. Like, if I actually think about like what one of my most played games is,
so people
I'd probably say
they approach this from two different angles. One is like a game that I can just play because it's effectively infinite, or a game that is so vast I'll never finish it, or a game that like I just love and know I can replay.
Yeah, because that's kind of the thing with XCOM is that I know I love it and I know I'll replay it, but it does end and I have to take a break. Like, I can't, as soon as the game ends, I'm like, right, I'll come back next year.
Yeah.
I remember actually I played through all of it in January of last year and I'm playing through all of it again right now. But when I finish it, I'm not going to play it again.
Yeah.
Where on the opposite side of it, I'd say Hades.
Oh, nice.
Hades for me would be the game that, like, I think that I want to see what it seems to just be so unending. Like, there must be a point where they stopped writing for it, right? Like, because there's so much story in it. There must be an ending, and I've never gotten to it. And I've put 100 hours on my Switch, 100 hours on Steam into that game, and still I've never satisfyingly felt like I've gone through everything. So I would love to reset it and just play through it until I've actually done every single thing that's in it.
Nice.
Also, I like the gameplay a lot.
Oh, it's also enjoyable and fun. That's a good bonus.
Yeah. It's also a good game.
we love that. We love that. Okay, excellent choices. I now like to turn the tables upon myself and say, is there a question you would like to ask me? Now, I'm going to preface that with, please don't ask about the PhD. Don't ask PhD people how the PhD is going. And I've also been asked like the biome question before. I've also really recently, like, I think tail end of last season and this season, like, a thing I'm looking forward to, and like the answer to that hasn't changed because of when we're recording this. Those caveats aside, please ask me a question if you have one. I see. The turns are tabled. You're in the hot seat now, Brent. It's not, hosting. Not as easy as I make it look, eh?
I think of just awful things. Like, there's no good questions I'm thinking of. Like, I'm trying to think, like, what would make you look worse?
I mean, that's fair.
Yeah, what if you could kill someone and no one find out who it'd be? No, that's not gonna be it. That's like that was like in my head. That was the first thing that came to my head. I was like, "What's the worst thing that I could possibly ask?"
Oh
But
wow.
don't answer that because there's no good answer. Because by answering the question, you've ruined it because you've said out loud who it would be.
Yeah, yeah.
Anyway, blah 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 blah. I think that my question to you would be, um, do you think you can get into this industry now after you've talked to a lot of people and you know what's coming up? And has your kind of mind changed? Because I know that you had a lot of perspectives on like what being deserving of the industry was and stuff like that. So I'm kind of interested if your mind has changed.
I think wholeheartedly, do I have something I can offer the industry? Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. 100%. Because I am an absolute badass who knows a lot of information and like it literally has a PhD in psychology, almost,
Mm-hmm.
asterisk. Like looking at mental health in video games. Now, like the way you present that is like actually this is human computer interaction, this is user research, this is design. Like, one of my studies looked at what happens to people's gameplay when we add or remove a number, whether that's visible or not. And that was one of my studies. Like that actually, for when you think about that from a design perspective, is actually hugely important depending on what you want to do with your game and what type of experience you want people to have with your game. So do I think that I personally can add something to that industry, like, a nice bit of spice into that dish? Yeah, absolutely, not in doubt. And I do, like, legitimately, I flirt with all my guests, but like, do in part think I reached that conclusion because of your help, because of the opportunities I felt like I could take through being mentored by you at Limit Break, right? Things that like I joined the Impact campaign because I was like, yeah, do you know what? I feel like maybe I can, and I have something to add here through the work that I've done with you. Um, I think getting there is like it's on the waiting list. Partly because
Mm-hmm.
2023 was a very tough year for the industry overall. I do have that thesis to finish writing, but I think it's on my list of things to do, and I think I have something to bring to it that like no one else has. I do have a unique perspective, right? And it's about marketing that and the irony, like and trying to demonstrate that in a way that someone finds appealing in a position that seems right.
Mm-hmm.
So yes is the short answer
Yeah.
to that.
Awesome. Okay. I think that brings me a lot of joy because that is for me that was my goal as being a mentor. Um, so I'm very happy that you understand what I told you when we first met.
No, and I think for listener benefit, I very much like went into our first meeting being like, I don't think I have anything to offer. I do a whole bunch of stuff, but I'm not really good at it. The industry is such a dark, shadowy figure.
Mm.
Like, and I think even like even within the very sort of, I'm gonna say, safe space that was Limit Break, I was like, oh, gosh, like I talked to these amazing, talented people, every single other person in the room, and I'm here like research, like.
It's awesome. That's such a good thing to have. I think that I'm going to say to you what I said on the Limit Break panel when we did it together. Um, it's something really key and I think really important is that it sounds really horrible when I say it first, and I think it's important that you keep listening after I say it. No one deserves to be here. Do you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like it's not a thing that you like are deserving of. It's much more a thing of you worked towards it and you got it. And I think that if you have this mentality that I don't deserve it, the only way to eliminate the mentality of I don't deserve it by understanding that there isn't really a deserving
Mhm.
of this. We deserve other things in our lives. We deserve a roof over our heads. We deserve good meals to come to us. We deserve love from our friends and family. But when
Universal
we talk about
healthcare.
deserve, yeah, it's talking about self-care. When we talk about deserving, you shouldn't talk about your paycheck. Because sorry, you shouldn't talk about what you do to get your paycheck because you're deserving of your paycheck, not the
Mhm.
work you do. Um, and I think that it kind of leads to this like golden job opportunity where it's like, oh my God, I'm living my dream. I can do anything, now. And it's like, I don't care about the money I make and this and that. It's like, no, like care about yourself. And that's what you're deserving of, to care about yourself. And to think that you're not deserving of an industry where I don't think anyone is deserving of because there's so much to it. Like there's so many aspects, so many disciplines, so many elements. Um, I think that it helps you get into the mentality that you are meant to be there over that. And I don't know. I always feel very controversial when I say that, because I don't want people to feel like they aren't deserving of things, because you are deserving of things in life, but it's a job that you're trying to get. It's not a, it's not a house. It's not a dog. It's not a partner. It's a job. And realistically, when you're trying to get a job, you shouldn't think if you deserve it or not, because you should have one to earn, to live. Capitalist housecape.
What a beautiful note to end on. Bryn, my last sort of formal question is, where can people find you on the interwebs?
Follow me on X at Eat Chilies. Add me on LinkedIn if you got any serious questions about things. And hang out with me in the park outside your house, because I know where it is. And I'm there right now. Look out your window. I'm waving.
You're gonna be in a park one day in the summer, and someone's gonna just like throw a can at you from a window. And you'll be like, "What the heck is happening?" Hey, that's all right.
That'll be me.
We love it. Well, Bryn, thank you so much for joining me. This has been a pleasure and a privilege to host you, to once again share some of your knowledge and information. And I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have. For listeners' benefit, for people watching along, I'm going to flick to the button where it says stream ended now, because that's what you do when you're a creator. Thank you all for joining me. Goodbye. As we always say on this show, look after your mind, body, and soul. And until next time, take it easy. Bye-bye.
Bye.